People like Roland Martin will have you thinking that the Democratic Party and everything that the Democratic Party brings out is God's gift to black people.
Biden's done nothing for black people. And you go, nothing?
I know.
And it's sort of this absolutism. I get a kick out of the, well, we ain't got no anti-black hate crime bill. Actually, there have been 3.
Now, Roland Martin, I heard the Democratic Party's got you party whipped. Why don't you reverse it?
Why don't you reverse it?
Don't be party whip. Whip that party. People like Roland Martin will have you thinking that the Democratic Party and everything that the Democratic Party brings out is God's gift to black people. And it really isn't. And it's unfortunate because we should, as a community, as a black community, should be operating the same way that AIPAC does. The problem with our community is that we look for individual martyrs instead of fixating on a particular event. In all reality, we should never, never, never allow America or anyone else to degrade slavery, to degrade, should never allow anyone to degrade slavery. We should never allow America to forget slavery. And the reason why we shouldn't is because we should have a never again attitude. So enslavement by any means. We won't allow enslavement through economic means. We won't allow enslavement through bad education. We won't allow enslavement through student debt. We won't allow enslavement by any means available. We will not. And we look for individual martyrs. So Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice, Mike Brown. We look for martyrs in our community. And the moment that energy dies down, then it's like, all right, what next? But we should fixate and focus on one particular event, and that is slavery. Why should we focus on slavery? Because slavery created the conditions for black people to be mentally enslaved, not only physically enslaved, but mentally enslaved, psychologically enslaved, emotionally enslaved, and most importantly, financially enslaved. We were brought out of capitalism, out of the capitalistic system, meaning that we weren't allowed to make money. We were the actual capital and assets that were traded. We weren't allowed to trade assets. We were the assets being traded. So all in all, what we should do is make sure that America knows that they owe us. When we start operating like a powerful lobby like AIPAC, right? When we start lobbying for our particular interests, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, doesn't matter if you're a Republican, that whoever is in power owes you something. Whoever is in power, we're making demands for resources, meaning we pay our taxes, but we don't get the benefits of our tax dollars. And Democratic messengers and journalists like Roland Martin will tell us that, oh, we should always give our loyalty to the Democratic Party, but get mad when people are saying, well, the Democratic Party isn't necessarily doing much for me and my family from a values perspective, from an economic perspective. Yes, food stamps are great, but entrepreneurship training, job training, and apprentices is much more effective, particularly in our community. Yes, public housing is great. However, what's even better than that is giving us economic opportunities, giving us business grants, giving us easy access to capital so that we can build businesses and build communities of our own. We focus too much on party instead of making sure that the candidates and our local officials and our local politicians, our state politicians, give us what we need. But only when we as black people show that our loyalty is to ourselves and to our interests and to building our community, will our politicians recognize that unless they offer us something instead of offering us trinkets and little Cracker Jack barrel prizes, that we're not going to be respected. So if we want to be respected, then we have to show that any candidate that is speaking to our issues, that's who's going to get our vote, regardless if they're Democrat, regardless if they're Republican. Now, me personally, I'm an independent. And when I ran for United States Senate in the 2020 elections, I ran as an independent. But you would be surprised how threatening I was as a candidate to the Democratic Party. Why? Because I'm young, I'm black, I'm educated, I'm charismatic, I'm smart. And those are all things that usually that the Democrats want. But the fact that I wasn't under Democratic control is what made me a threat to any other Democratic candidates. So for us as black people, as black people, one of the things that we do is we get focused on being black, when we should really focus on being Americans. And because of our cultural history, because of what has happened to us, we should get reparations. Everybody in this country, there are groups in this country who have received reparations, who have received remuneration, who've received money because they were done wrong by the American government, by the United States government. But when it comes to black people, we allow others to bully us into saying our issues and slavery isn't important. But slavery was important. Slavery is the reason why we have the J.P. Morgan Chases. It's the reason why we have the Rockefellers. It's the reason why we have the Vanderbilts. It's the reason why we have the White House and the Capitol building, because it was built by slaves. It was built by my enslaved ancestors. So when people say to us that this is a country of immigrants, that's not true, because we didn't immigrate to this country. We were brought here as property. We didn't have a choice. We didn't make the active choice of being here. Now, there were black people here. There were people from the African continent here before Columbus ever said that he discovered it. But for many of us as well, we came here on ships and the bottom of slave holes on these ships. We were the only people who were brought here as property. Yes, people say, oh, well, there were white people that were slaves too. Yeah, but they could get their freedom and integrate into society. There was no way that a black person was going to be able to integrate into society without having any major issues. So we should focus on slavery, focus on the effects that slavery has had, and not just on the black community, but how America has benefited from slavery. And I'm not trying to make anybody feel guilty. What I'm saying is that when black people start recognizing their own power, when they start recognizing their own interests, then you can start being powerful and advocate for your interests. But as long as we give our vote, give our power, give our cosign to people who only give us trinkets, then they don't have any other incentive to do anything else. So when you hear people like Roland Martin and all these people on television, on mainstream television, talking about the Democrats, I look at them with contempt. I look at them with not necessarily disgust, but I look at them sideways. I look at them sideways because the only reason why they're able to enjoy the benefits of the Democratic Party is because they're caping for the Democratic Party. I want us to cape for black people, cape for black families, cape for black power. I'm an American, I'm a black American, and I'm American first.